Hello and welcome to another LOTRO Update 15 preview video with me, Balthelion. So today we're going to look at the Beorning's red trait tree, which is called the Claw. So this one is the damage tree, focusing on maximising your DPS as both a man and a bear. So if we just cover the description first, it consumes wrath to deal crushing damage. Empowering both bear and man, this line focuses on overpowering foes with devastating attacks. So by traiting this, we're going to get two skills to start off with, which are Bash and Expose. And we're also going to get a passive bonus which is called Bestial Fury. Whenever you critically hit with skills, you gain +3 Wrath. So if you've got a fair bit of crit, particularly at higher levels, once you've got your build sorted a bit better, you will build Wrath really quickly, which means you can use the skills which cost Wrath a lot more often. Which will obviously further increase your damage because those skills, like the Hunter and Champ skills, which consume focus and further, they tend to do a bit more damage. But yeah, the limitations of the Beorning, since it's not based on power, it's based on Wrath, is a lot more cooldown focused. So if you can spam those skills as soon as they're up, your damage will go up. Pardon me. Your damage will go up quite a lot. But yes, so the two skills we've got first then, Bash and Expose. Bash is usable in bear form. It's a melee attack. A devastating attack with all your might that leaves your target bleeding. So, does some basic damage. This is obviously going to be pretty low because I'm only level 6 at the moment. And also inflicts a bleed, costs 10 Wrath, and has a 12-second cooldown. Next up we have Exposed. This one is only usable in man form. Seeing a weakness in the enemy's defences, you exploit it, allowing your following attacks to deal more damage. So for the next 8 seconds, your target will have -40% mitigation, which is one hell of a debuff. That could be pretty strong in a boss fight, particularly if you've got more than one Beorning. Because imagine that in like a raid setting, if you remove 40% of the boss's mitigation, that'd be pretty damn strong. Permanently remove as well, because the cooldown of the skill is 5 seconds, but the duration of the effect is 8 seconds. So that's probably going to get nerfed, because that is pretty strong. But that will also add 10 to your wrath. So that's a pretty good, pardon me, skill for spamming. If we just close those, then we're going to select our trait tree, and we're going to have a look at some of these traits. Okay, so first up then, let's have a look at the bonuses for this tree. So once you spend 5 ranks in the red tree, you get your first passive bonus, which is called Flayer of Evil. While your people in their bear form are known for their might, you appear larger and more formidable than most. So you do an extra 30% damage while in bear form, which is quite nice. If you spend 10 points in the red tree, you'll get Battle Worn. Throughout your life, you have defended your land from countless orc attacks, seasoning you as a warrior. Switching into bear form will refresh your exposed weakness buff, plus 25% critical damage. So I'm not entirely sure where that buff comes from originally, because I haven't been able to test a higher level Beorning. But yeah, obviously when you transform into a bear, you're going to get a buff which will increase your crit damage, and at higher levels, when you actually be critting quite often, that will be a fair chunk of extra damage. And that one obviously helps if you're transforming back and forth between man and bear as often as possible, to refresh that as often as you can. If you spend 15 points in your trait tree, you will get Sharpened Claws. Letting out a fierce war cry empowers you. After using Ferocious Roar, your next attack will critically hit. So you can get a controlled crit whenever you want it, and then use that for various effects later on. If you spend 20 points in your trait tree, you will get Brutal Energy. The faster you slay a foe, the quicker you can defeat the next. Relentless Maul now deals its damage in half the time it did previously, so you can just lay waste to somebody. And I think that's the skill where you just end up bitch slapping things with your bear paws pretty often. Festering Runes is the one that you get at 25 ranks in the trait tree. So wounds you inflict upon your enemies take longer than usual to heal. Plus 3 bash pulses. So bash will be one of your basic skills. What's that one we got a minute ago? Yeah, bash is the basic attack that will inflict a bleed in bear form. So you do more bleeds as a bear. 30 points in your trait tree will give you raining blows. You grow in strength each time you strike your foe with your claws. Each hit of thrash increases the damage of the Beorning by 5%, stacking up to 3 times, so potentially up to 15% bonus damage, which is very nice. And then the last bonus, which requires 35 points in the red tree, is Wrathful. Your wrath on the battlefield is that of legend. Gain 3% critical chance for every 20 wrath. So potentially you can have up to 100 wrath, which will equate to a 15% critical chance bonus, and that 15% will overcap you if you hit the cap along the way. So you can have a pretty high crit chance as Beorning, which is pretty damn awesome. So next up we're going to start looking at some of the traits in the tree. Okay, so the first set of skills you have are Thrash Damage, Critical Chance and Any Advantage. Thrash Damage increases the damage of Thrash per rank, so there are 5 ranks in that skill, going up 3% extra damage per rank to that skill. Critical Chance does what it says on the tin, increases your critical chance per rank. It's 1% per level for 5 ranks. And Any Advantage, striking an enemy from behind with Slam will heal you. So the first one will activate the healing ability with Slam. So hitting an enemy from behind with Slam heals the Beorning, and then bear in mind this is level 6 healing rating, 66 to 74 morale, which at level 6, if I just move the trait panel down, is probably a fair chunk of my 420 morale. But obviously that will scale as you level up. Ranks 2 and 3 will give you an extra 10 and 20% healing. That doesn't stack, so it's only 20% with the 3rd rank, but that's still going to be a fair amount of healing. So that's going to be pretty useful, certainly in a group situation. Might be a bit harder to get behind a mob if you're soloing though, so just bear that in mind if you're going for a soloing spec. For the second rank of skills you have 3 options again. So the first of these is Bleed Damage. Slash now applies a bleed that can stack up to 3 times. Additional ranks increase the potency of the bleed. So rank 1 will now give the bleed effect to Slash. As you can see, it's a pretty crappy bleed because I'm only level 6, so that should scale up. It's not going to be the best bleed, but it's bonus damage, so you can't complain. As you rank that up to 5 though, you get an extra 5% damage on those bleeds, up for a maximum bonus of 20% bonus bleed damage. Which should make it a bit more acceptable. The second skill is Enraging Sacrifice. Reduces the amount of damage sacrifice redirects from your ally. Gain wrath every time your sacrifice target is hit. So sacrifice, as I understand it, works a bit like the Guardian skill. I can't remember the name of it, where you can put a buff on an ally and redirect some of the damage onto yourself. So you basically choose somebody to protect. So probably be your healer or something in the group. I'm pretty sure you can't put it on yourself because that would be cheating. But yeah, if you're grouping, that will be a more useful trait. So the ranks in that. Rank 1, while protecting your ally with sacrifice, every time your target is hit, apply to the source of sacrifice, so the Beorning that is casting the sacrifice skill on the ally, plus 3 wrath, and for the next 12 seconds, minus 5% damage redirected. And then ranks 2 and 3 will increase the damage redirected from the ally to the Beorning, and increase the amount of wrath the Beorning gets when their ally is hit. There's a bit of difficulty getting your head around that. So the third skill you can get is Execute. Unlocks Execute, a heavy hitting skill that costs wrath. So 1 point in that will get you the Execute skill, which is a bear form attack. It is melee, so it's only 2.5 meter range. Consuming all of your wrath, you put your energy into one final attack to defeat the enemy before you. Only usable on a target below 30% health. You need at least 1 wrath, and I believe that damage should scale based on the amount of wrath you have. So if you have a high level of wrath, you use that as your finishing blow, you should absolutely decimate whatever mob's left. Or if you're in a massive boss fight and he's got 30%, which is a hell of a lot of morale, then you can just chunk him for even more damage. in the last phases of the boss fight. So the cooldown on that skill is only 3 seconds. Obviously once you've used it the first time you're not going to have any wrath, you need to build up your wrath again before you use it. I'm not sure whether it would be worth spamming it every 3 seconds and just consuming the wrath you've got, or whether it's worth stacking it up high before you use it. But that'll be something to play around with once this hits live. In the third tier of traits we've got 2 options, the first of which is Lumber. After using Rush in bear form, your next attack will knock down your target. So I'm not entirely sure what Rush is. Rush is probably a bear form only skill. But it can be quite handy to knock down your target. It would enable you to get behind the target to do those healing bonuses we've come across earlier in the trait tree. And generally just crap on whatever target is. If it's a hard target you might want to knock it down, do as much damage as you can before it starts hitting you back. There's only 1 rank in that skill. Next up there is Turn of the Tides. Nature's Vengeance now deals damage to the target for every corruption it removes. Additional ranks increase the amount of damage you do per corruption removed. So at rank 1, for each corruption removed from the target. Right, it's a bit confusing how this is worded. So you remove up to 3 corruption effects from the target, but for each one you will inflict a certain amount of damage, which is only low at the minute because I'm level 6, but that should scale as you level up. And then the damage that Turn the Tide will get from that goes up 25% per bonus rank, and at rank 5 it's 100% extra damage. So that is probably quite useful. If the enemy is a particular nasty type of enemy that loves stacking corruptions, let them stack them, remove them, and you're going to do a nice bit of burst damage to them. Tier 4 traits, we have 3 options. So the first of which is melee damage. Increases your melee damage per rank, so this is the same as most classes have, one of these traits in their damage tree. So you get 1% bonus melee damage per rank, goes up to 2%, sorry, goes up to 10% at rank 5. The second trait you have is Serrated Edge. Biting Edge becomes a single attack, distributing the second attack as a bleed over 12 seconds. So the first one, converts it, instead of being like a 2-hit attack, 1-hit attack, and then a bleed immediately applied on that first hit as well. And at rank 2, 100% bleed damage, so that's going to be a fair buff to that skill. So that should be pretty much 100% of your offhand damage being added to that skill. Third trait you have is Final Strike. So Final Strike is a follow-up skill to Execute, which we got in the second tier of traits. This increases the damage and health threshold of the there's a typo in there, requirement of Execute. So you get plus 10% Execute health threshold, so you can only use Execute at 30% of the enemy's morale. At rank 1 it will be 40, at rank 2 it will be 50%. And you also get a bonus to the damage that Execute will do, so 10% or 20% if you get rank 1 or 2 in that skill. Rank 5 is unusual, there's only 1 skill in this, so unless you pick up some of the traits in earlier lines, you're going to have to spend some points on this particular trait. So this one is called Debilitating Bees. Bee Swarm reduces the target's physical mitigation for its duration. So at rank 1, in addition to damage, Debilitating Bees also applies minus 3% physical mitigation. Bearing in mind, most of the damage your Beorning will be doing will be physical damage. That effect lasts for 12 seconds, and then for each additional rank, the amount of physical mitigation that the bees will inflict on your enemy will go up by 3%. And that will stop at a maximum of minus 12%, so by removing some of the enemy's physical mitigation, your physical damage will be higher against that target. So that is pretty cool. Tier 6 we have 2 options. So the first of these is Composure. Hearten becomes Composure, a self-only heal that heals the Beorning for a percentage of his or her maximum morale per tick. So Hearten is a skill which normally would affect your entire fellowship and just give them a nice little healy buff. So if you get this, you get a stronger heal, but it's only for yourself. So at the first rank, Hearten becomes a self-heal called Composure. And then at each additional rank, that effect will heal 0.5% of your maximum morale per second. So to put that in perspective, if you had 1000 health, then you should heal 5 per tick. So maximum rank of that, it'll go up to 2% of your max morale per second. So it's quite nice, just heal ticking away in the background. And as you can see from the skill here, it's usable only in man form. You briefly regain yourself, increasing your morale. Every 1 second restores 3% of your max morale. I'd assume that that's the additional ranks of stacking on top of that, so it should be plus 5% at maximum rank, which is a fair chunk for 8 seconds. 14-second cooldown costs 10 wrath, so you should be able to keep yourself going quite happily with that. And the other trait in the line, which again is based on the execute trait line, so we have to buy execute at the 2nd rank, we have to buy final strike in the 4th rank, and that will give us moments of opportunity. Increases the damage of execute per rank. Max rank give the Beorning's attacks in bear form a chance to proc a free execute. So 10% execute damage, 20% at rank 2, and at rank 3, attacks in bear form have a 20% chance to proc a free execute that can be used regardless of the target's health, so even above that 30% or 50% threshold if you've spent those points. And it will also do 30% execute damage, so basically you really want that, because the amount of free damage you'll get just by doing normal attacks, it'll do suddenly this massive burst of bonus damage. It'll be pretty damn good. So that's going to be a pretty key trait if you're going in the red trait line. Tier 7, we're going to get a trait called Call to Wild. Unlocks the skill Call to Wild, a buff that increases the Beorning's damage, causes pip generators to build faster, and bear form skills to cost less for a duration. So the skill itself, Call to Wild, it's usable in any form, so either man or bear. Calling upon the beast within, you generate additional wrath when not in bear form, and spend less wrath within bear form. So skills that build wrath generate an additional 5 wrath. That's a flat bonus regardless of how many wrath it would normally build. While in bear form, it reduces the wrath cost of all skills by 5. So most of those bear skills will cost you 10 wrath, so that halves your wrath cost, which means you can stay in bear form, do those more devastating bear attacks a lot more often. So that buff lasts for 15 seconds. It will add 5 to wrath as well when you use it. It's got a 2-minute cooldown, so you generally only want to be using that if you want to do a nice bit of burst damage. If you're in a fellowship and your captain's burning his oathbreakers, or you've got your damage buffs that are limited time duration, chuck that in there along with all the other classes doing their own little tricks to do some pretty damaging alpha striking to a boss. So that's pretty much it then for the claw trait line. So if you guys want to see what's going on in the blue or yellow trait lines, the hide and the raw respectively, then I'll be doing separate videos for those, so stay tuned for those, and thanks for watching.